Ferrari tried the emergency button in Austria. 3 stops, fresh tires again and again. A strategy that should have rescued their race pace, protected the drivers, and given Hamilton and Leclerc a chance to fight back. But it failed. And that is the terrifying part, because when even a 3-stop strategy cannot save Ferrari, the problem is no longer just the tires. It is the car. It is the balance. It is the race pace. It is the uncomfortable truth that fresh rubber can hide the damage for a few laps, but it cannot fix a Ferrari that keeps eating its own performance. Mercedes saw it. Red Bull saw it. And Ferrari felt it. So now the real question is not whether Ferrari made the wrong strategy call. The real question is much worse. If 3 stops were not enough to save them in Austria, what happens when Ferrari runs out of tricks? Subscribe to the channel. At first, the 3-stop strategy looked like Ferrari's escape route. Not a perfect plan, not a comfortable plan, but a way out. Because when a team chooses 3 stops, is already telling you something important. The tires are not lasting long enough. The normal race rhythm is not safe enough. The car is asking too much from the rubber, and the pit wall is trying to break the race into smaller pieces before the whole afternoon collapses. That is what made Austria so tense. Ferrari did not arrive with nothing. They had hope. They had momentum. They had Hamilton coming from the emotion of Spain. They had Leclerc near the front. They had a qualifying picture that suggested the red cars could at least make Mercedes uncomfortable. But behind that hope, the warning signs were already flashing. Austria is not a circuit that forgives tire pain. The Red Bull ring is short, but it hits the tires again and again. Heavy braking, hard acceleration, long straights, then another traction zone, then another chance for the rear tires to overheat, slide, and lose life. Is like asking the same question every lap. Can your car protect the tires? And Ferrari's answer was not convincing enough. That is why the 3-stop strategy matters so much. It was not just a tactical choice. It was a confession that Ferrari needed help. The team needed fresher tires more often because the car could not keep the pace alive for long enough on a simpler plan. A strong car uses strategy to attack. A fragile car uses strategy to survive. In Austria, Ferrari looked closer to survival. And that changes the way the entire race feels. Because every pit stop is expensive. It costs time. It risks traffic. It forces the driver to overtake. It can destroy track position. So when Ferrari commits to stopping more often, the team is making a bet. Fresh tires must give back more time than the pit lane takes away. That only works if the car can use those fresh tires properly. And that is where the danger begins. Fresh tires can cover a weakness for a few laps. They give the driver more grip, more confidence, and short burst of life. The car feels sharper. The braking feels cleaner. The exits feel stronger. For a moment, the driver can believe the race is coming back. But if the car is still overheating the tires, still sliding too much, still losing too much efficiency, or still struggling to hold balance across a stint, then the same problem returns. Different tires set, same Ferrari. That is the nightmare. And that is what made the strategy failure so frightening. Because the question was no longer, did Ferrari choose the right number of stops? The question became, why did Ferrari need so many stops in the first place? That is a much deeper problem. Leclerc had already warned that Ferrari was losing too much time on the straights. That matters because Austria rewards speed and efficiency. If the car cannot defend itself on the straights, the driver has to work harder in the corners. But Ferrari was also surprised by its corner performance. So the driver cannot simply recover the lost time there either. Now add tire degradation. Suddenly, Ferrari is trapped from every direction. Not fast enough on the straights. Not comfortable enough in the corners. Not gentle enough on the tires. And when the team tries to fix the tire issue with extra stops, the race pace still refuses to become strong enough. That is when strategy stops looking like creativity. It starts looking like damage control. And for a team like Ferrari, that is painful. Because Ferrari is not supposed to be building races around survival. Ferrari is supposed to be forcing other teams to react. Ferrari is supposed to make Mercedes nervous, make Red Bull calculate, make the front of the grid feel pressure from the red cars. But Austria flipped that story. Mercedes looked controlled. Russell could shape the race from the front. Antonelli reached the podium and added another strong result for the team. Ferrari, meanwhile, was using pit stops as a way to chase a pace level that would not stay long enough. That is the difference between control and reaction. Mercedes was controlling. Ferrari was reacting. And once a team starts reacting, every decision becomes heavier. Stop early and you risk traffic. Stay out and the tires fade. Push now and you may kill the stint. Save now and the leaders escape. Use fresh tires and maybe you get a few good laps. But then the car starts asking the same painful question again. Can you keep this pace alive? In Austria, Ferrari did not have the answer it needed. And that is why block 1 of this story is so important. The 3-stop strategy was not the beginning of the disaster. It was the first clear sign that Ferrari already knew the race was slipping away. Because no team wants to spend an extra stop unless the tires are making the normal plan too dangerous. No team wants to give up track position unless staying out would be worse. No team wants to make the race more complicated unless the simple version is already broken. Ferrari chose complexity because the car gave them no comfort. And that is the real tension. Not that the strategy failed, but that Ferrari needed the strategy to rescue something the car should have been able to protect by itself. A front-running car should give its drivers options. It should let Hamilton and Leclerc attack, manage, extend, undercut, defend, and respond. It should allow the pit wall to make decisions from strength. Austria did the opposite. Leclerc near the front, Hamilton close behind. 2 red cars in position to challenge. The kind of Saturday result that makes the garage believe the weekend can still become something. But Sunday showed the difference between one-lap performance and race pace. One lap can be rescued by bravery. A race cannot. A race needs a car that repeats its performance without punishing the tires too heavily. A race needs a balance that stays predictable as fuel burns off. A race needs drivers who can follow, defend, and attack without the tires collapsing underneath them. Ferrari did not have enough of that in Austria, and Mercedes did. That contrast made the failure feel even sharper. George Russell controlled the race from the front. Mercedes looked calm where Ferrari looked busy. Kimi Antonelli, reaching the podium, reinforced the feeling that Mercedes could manage the demands of the Red Bull ring better than Ferrari. Red Bull also stayed in the fight with Verstappen on the podium. Ferrari had to use strategy to chase what others seemed to have naturally. Control. That is the word Ferrari could not find. Control over tire wear. Control over race pace. Control over the strategic picture. Control over the gap to the cars ahead. And without control, 3 stops can become a very expensive way to prove that the car is still not where it needs to be. Because every stop costs time. Every extra stop increases the amount of pace needed to recover. Every time the car leaves the pits, the driver is asked to attack harder to make the strategy work. But if attacking harder damages the tires faster, the strategy begins fighting itself. That is exactly the nightmare. The 3-stop plan needs aggression. The Ferrari tire situation punishes aggression. So the strategy asks the driver to push, while the car tells him to protect. There's no easy way out of that conflict. And when a race becomes that conflicted, tension inside Ferrari becomes unavoidable. Because after Austria, nobody can simply say, we needed fresher tires. Ferrari already tried that. Nobody can simply say, we should have been more aggressive. 3 stops was already aggressive. Nobody can simply say, the tire life caught us out. The entire strategy was shaped around tire life. So the real question becomes much harder. Why was the car so unable to turn fresh tires into sustained pace? That is the question that follows Ferrari back to factory. Not the headline, not the emotion, not the fan anger. That question. Because if Ferrari can answer it, Austria becomes a painful lesson. If Ferrari cannot answer it, Austria becomes a warning for the rest of the season. And rivals will not wait for Ferrari to solve it. Mercedes will study the race carefully. They will see that if Ferrari is pushed into tire trouble, the red cars may need extra stops just to stay competitive. Red Bull will see the same thing. Every rival will understand that making Ferrari work harder early in a stint could pay off later. That is how one strategy failure becomes a weakness opponents can attack. Force Ferrari to follow. Force Ferrari into dirty air. Force Ferrari to defend. Force Ferrari to use the rear tires. Make the team choose between another stop and fading pace. That is the blueprint Austria may have exposed. And this is where the tension becomes bigger than one Grand Prix. Because Ferrari's 3-stop failure suggests the team did not have a clean strategic path. If they stayed conventional, the tires could fade. If they went aggressive, the lost pit time became difficult to recover. If they pushed on fresh tires, the degradation returned. If they protected the tires, the race pace stayed too weak. Every door led back to the same room. The car was not giving enough. That is the most painful conclusion for a team with Hamilton and Leclerc. because both drivers can do extraordinary things when the car gives them a platform. Hamilton can manage tires with incredible intelligence. Leclerc can produce sharp speed and pressure when he trusts the front end and rear traction. But even elite drivers cannot turn a bad tire window into a championship-level race pace every Sunday. They need the machine to meet them halfway. In Austria, it did not, and that is why the three-stop failure carries so much weight. It was not just a failed plan. It was Ferrari testing whether strategy could rescue the race and discovering that the limitation was too deep for fresh tires alone. That is a frightening realization, because it means the next solution cannot only come from the pit wall. It has to come from the car, from setup understanding, from cooling management, from tire loading, from aerodynamic balance, from the way the SF26 behaves when the race stops being clean and starts becoming brutal. Ferrari needs a car that does not require rescue so early. A car that lets the pit wall choose strategy from confidence, not fear. A car that makes 3 stops an option, not an emergency. Until then, every aggressive strategy will carry the same hidden danger. It may look bold. It may sound clever. It may give the drivers a brief burst of grip. But if the car keeps destroying the tires faster than the strategy can exploit them, the result will keep circling back to the same painful truth. Ferrari did not run out of pit stops in Austria. Ferrari ran out of answers.